Hey everyone, welcome back to our second livery class. If you haven't, go back, watch the first one. We went over all of the basics of the livery editor itself. So, the ins and outs of paint and choosing decals, finding decals, organizing decals, and all the good stuff of learning the livery editor in GT7, which, if you're just starting out, can be a beast. If you're not a novice and you've done plenty of liveries, that the first class might not be for you. But this second class, we are going to do some work with fades. This class is probably going to be a bit shorter, as we're mostly going to just work with fades, the basics of fades. But I think it's a huge opportunity and thing to learn from is fades. Some people know the basics. Some people don't even know how to use fades at all, and they can be huge on any car. Just to get a baseline, or or even to add a little bit extra underneath or in other spots. I think fades are underrated. They can be used just about anywhere, anytime. You're not going to use them on every single style, but I use fades a ton, so I think it's good to understand them. So from the start, we're just going to create a whole new design from scratch. We are just going to throw a black on the back, I think, and then we'll jump straight into it. We'll do this. Almost has a purple tint to it. It's a black violet mix. We'll make sure everything works on here. So the basics about fades are, let's go into decals, and most of what I use are in shape 2. This is all your preset decals where you can find 80-90% of what you probably will need, um, especially starting out. You can find in here. You can find fades by searching, and you're going to find all kinds of different fades that way. You might find fades like this, fades in different shapes, um, fades on top of styles. So different type of decal styles will fade out. You can find just about anything. Just as a basic search, go out and search. We'll do it right now. Let's go out and search fade. It's not all the exact same fades, but like look at here, you have a style that fades. There's a little bit transparency in here that I guess they decided to use the tag fades, but everything these pattern into fades, getting smaller instead of the fades we're really looking at today are kind of going from solid to transparent. But this is a different type of fade you can use, but different shapes. This half circle, you don't really have a half circle in your um, presets, this kind of cracked rock look. Anyways, you can do all of what we're going to kind of talk about. I'm going to go on the basics and use kind of these presets. But you can go and search for other things. Or if there's another shape you're looking for, it might be out here. This little quarter circle. It says quarter square, but it's squared off. It's more like a circle in shape. Anyways, you can use any of those. We're going to stick to the basics today. Um, just inside our preset decals. But just know a lot of this you can apply to those other ones you see out there that you want to use. So for the first things with fades is preset decals. I use the square a lot on a lot of stuff, but there's all kinds of different shapes you might use. You might need, some curves or anything else. So make sure to go check that out. I always make sure, especially with fades, and how I use them, I always make sure I'm set left to the car. I want to make sure if you remember from our first class, when we're going to mirror it on the other side using one decal, I like being exactly left to make sure it goes over exactly the same. So doing that, we're going to go into our projection range. We're going to align with camera. We're going to turn our angle all the way up and our depth all the way up. Again, just like in class one, the basics, that's just so we get it mirrored exactly the same. Once you set those, you can rotate and it's not going to change your decal. It's not going to skew it on the other side wrong. Um, but yeah, then we're going to, in this case, I'm going to go bottom to top. So I'm going to rotate. 270 is technically supposed to go with the bottom probably. But I'm going to probably angle this anyways. So I am setting this up to go this whole length of the car. And let's make it a little bit taller. I don't really want it to go past the wheels, which is doing in the front. If I would press the right direction on here. So the big thing is I like making sure if we're going to be symmetrical, like I said, make sure to pick left. We'll put this base fade on here. I'm going to click into that and then come out. One thing to keep in mind with that too is it helps if, say, you're going up here and you want to do something that goes over from one side to the other. If we didn't choose to align this with a camera and turn our angles up, and we instead wanted to try to duplicate it, it's gonna probably overlap each other. And with fades, anywhere where that transparency is and it overlaps, it's going to make it less transparent. So you're gonna see that in your lines. So I like making sure I do what I just did with the align with camera, turning the angles up, to making sure we are directly on the left side by choosing that default view. Because then it matches up. Nothing overlaps. We're not getting weird lines. I'm going to choose another one just to show you. Let's go left. Let's choose this. Let's go like this. And to make sure it gets it up and over the roof. See, without the angles, it stops there. And the depth, we're gonna increase the depth and the angle, but because it's with the surface, it's not working how it did with align with camera. See how that'll just go straight across? That's why I do that. Let's do surface, and if you were to try to line this thing up, let's duplicate it symmetrically, and now look at what you have. It's a mess. It's just a mess. And then if you're trying to, if you didn't know about the way I just talked about this back one, you could, you could try to bring it down and line it up. It's messy. So the basics with fades are, for me, stick to the basics, which is making sure we do the align with camera, the angles up. That way it lines stuff up and we don't have those issues. I'll also say this. If this is where you want your fade, you're solid to start back here. Fade to the front. What I do to fill in that back, if you want that back to be the full the full color, is I will go in, duplicate it. That just put another fade over the top, right? We want to replace it with, if we want to fill the whole thing out, I just would do a square. And that's right over the top of it. However, it created the perfect line to line up now. Maybe you even want to leave a line in there. That's the style you want to look for. That's fine. Or you can line it up perfect now. The duplicate and replace with that shape will help keep that all back here solid. And it helps with that line. If you try to, instead of duplicating and replace, let's just get rid of that. We try putting a square in here. We'll even do align with surface, angle, depth. We'll go over here, we'll rotate and make it bigger. Just as an example. Now, just look at how much more time this is taking to line up perfectly. And it's kind of a bigger deal on, I mean, we got there. That's not too bad. But that took longer than just a duplicate and replace. But it's important on fades because if you angle this too much, only that little bit on the fade decal, the very right bit, is 100% filled, right? All the way further to the left, it's getting more transparent. So if this doesn't line up right and it's too far over, look down here on the bottom left. You're starting to see that other decal. And this is white, so it took a while. You know, you're not going to be off that far on the angle while trying to line it up, right? You'll only be off a little bit, but it's easier to see depending on the colors. So that's another tip. Duplicate this this fade, replace it with whatever shape you want, and then it's already lined up. All you got to do is move it back, and you're good to go. So that's that with setting up your fades. Next, we're just gonna go in and we're gonna I'm gonna go back to where I had this and just kind of go through because that was the basics here. We're going to run this all the way to the back. Same thing with like the back of the car. You know how I just showed all of that if you don't adjust your camera and your angles for the top and how it got wonky? Same thing if you're doing a fade, from bottom to top, top to bottom, and you get to the back, same thing will happen. You're going to have some wonky stuff going back here. Sometimes you can fix it. Sometimes it is a pain in the butt to fix. I'm going to try to line it up a little more with the angle of the car there. See, when we go up and fade there a little bit, there's the door line. It's not screwed up. That's a shadow, but where the fade comes, I kind of want it. If this was a regular line, it's kind of keeping with the line of the car is all I'm trying to do here. So we're gonna set that down. Let's I don't really know which blue. Let's just go with that. So right now I'm going to keep that. I wonder, now that I have it at an angle, I actually might. I'm going to run it the whole way in the front. Same thing as I mentioned for the back. The front is going to be the same thing. If you don't change that, you're going to have a heck of a time. I will say, sometimes I'll do fades different on this part of the body. And then, like, if I want them to go quicker, I'll angle it down more here. In this simple case, and that means you just have to copy what you're doing up here compared to what you're doing on the side of the body. In this case, I'm going to run it the whole car. Just because I think it'll work out for this. Now, that's kind of just the basics of fade. Literally, it's that simple. Um, I don't like how it's really hitting back there because of the car. Maybe I'll angle it a little different. I guess it's all right. It's just kind of going with the car and creating this top layer. I'm probably going to change and show another technique anyways, so we'll keep it. But that's the basics. You can throw a fade anywhere, um, and it can be under stuff, just to help outline and pop some different lines you might have going, normal racing line shapes and stuff. Sometimes bringing a fade right behind that will help pop colors. The only other thing on the basics I'll say about fades is when you're fading, say, front to back, or the GTR that I just looked at in our first video on the basics, the top, um, this top was that other, I believe. And so you're going to have to match, if you're going, say, front to back, your fade on your hood, on the top, stuff like that. What I will say to do that is if I'm going front to back, I will look at over here on the top right. I will look at my scale and try to match that scale when I'm doing the hood. And then you try to match where it starts and finishes. So if you're going to do multiple fades on top of each other, like I'm about to do for this example, I would do one fade at a time if you're doing front to back or back to front. I'd do one at a time because then you can kind of get an idea where they start. Because once we start doing other fades with other colors and they start blending together, it's harder to match up where they were, right? So then all of a sudden you have three colors and you're trying to match this perfect blend. Do one at a time. That is one of my biggest tips with doing multiple fade colors in front to back or back to front. Do one at a time so you can match them up on other body parts um, like the hood. In this case, same could be said for this other part. What else is other? That window is other. These front spots are other. That's other on the hood. In this case, I artistically I don't know if I would do this or if I'd leave this a solid color. Kind of like the solid color, but you know that would be something to keep in mind, just like body 2 in the hood. We're going to duplicate this. Oops. Another thing with fades too is if sometimes you want it to be even sharper and not as transparent, but like where it drops off, it's sharper. You can always just duplicate right on top and see how it got a little brighter. It got a little closer to the actual color we're using. I've used that before, or you can do that and like bring it down some. That kind of stuff. In this case, I actually want to duplicate, and we're not going to use the same color. Um, we're going to go into like a red. And I want to, which direction is shortening? I want to shorten it up a little bit. Let's get a bit of that red up there. In this case, I'm going to duplicate, and I'm going to go here and triangle to replace. Get that square, and bring our red down here. We're going to duplicate again because red is not my last color I want. Because we did that duplicate replace, we want this fade back on top of that blocked red. So we're going to hit triangle. We're going to move layer. We're going to bring it on top. I think I want. Not sure which orange, but I want an orange. We're going to go an orange kind of like that. Maybe make it a teeny bit shorter. All right. So like that. Now this is a pretty basic fade. I've done this in the past. This exact color combo, but you can do any color combos you want, right? Play around with it. The other part of the basics with fades that will help is, say this is too orange, you still want it. Don't forget about the transparency. So we can go in, it's 100% right now. We hit triangle. We can, lighten this up. That's going to darken it because the red's behind it. But if that's what we're looking for, it can help blend. Like we were doing on the blue here, is you can also duplicate it, and that second one you can lighten up some to do some extra blending. It's really just color blending is all. Like it's like taking paint and blending it together. Play with it. Play with excuse me, with different colors, duplicating more, making different layers more transparent, less transparent, to get what you're looking for. You know? But it kind of gives you the basic idea of fades. Is you can do one single fade, and even just that will give you such a cool effect. Like you can make a ton of simple liveries just on one fade. One fade somewhere, fade one color to the next, and then placing decals. It can be that simple, right? Let's go to body 2. Um, and let's do shapes. I can't remember what I did before on this. When I did these. But anyways, we'll do another shape. We had blue first. Let's duplicate it. Let's replace, and well, we don't need to replace. What am I talking about? Let's change the color. Don't love it as much. And that will happen, right? It could be, let's try this, replace. Could be maybe one of these other ones I like more. We'll see. Let's replace that and change colors. So just playing around with it and playing around with the different options you have or you pulled out of, because it just seems a little. We're going to replace that and see if this one in there. All right. Well, just because we're going to keep, I'm not going to create a whole livery right now. But there's your, your basics. That orange is definitely brighter than I want it to be compared to the corner, but so is the red. I think we just probably need to get more blue in there. Anyways, that's what I'll say. Play around with the fades a bit until you find something you like. Next, we did the basics of the fade. Something to keep in mind while you're doing fades, especially if you do layers, is you can use them to create other effects from fades over the top of stuff, fades behind stuff. I know I kind of touched on fades behind things, not an example, but like in this case, let's go and search for some stars. I want stuff like that maybe. Maybe that. I just want random. Let's try this. See what this looks like. You can kind of see. It might be a little too spread out for me. Maybe I'll just do the box style. I just don't want them to look this. Here we go. All right. So you can use them to have some cool effects. In this case, kind of stars is what I'm looking for, right? But here you know, you got your like your bright stars. They're popping out in the horizon, but maybe that's too many that are that bright on the horizon. They're not all that bright, right? Normally, when you're coming down towards the horizon, everything's brightening up, or you know, they're not as they don't pop out as much. Let's go and move them down here some. They got a little bit lighter there, but they're still not behind the blue. So let's move them down under the blue. So they're going to get covered some. The further they're down, kind of the lighter they get. So if you want them down there, or if you don't want them to start until a little bit up further, like I'm probably going to do, you can and you can go back and add layers over the top of that to again make these they're there, but they're layered underneath. They're in the distance. They're not as visible because it's lightening up or something like that. Anything like that. I've done stuff with that with like smoke and flames, which that's working on transparency as well. Is you can just layer, you just keep layers in mind, right? With these stars again, same thing. We can kind of lighten them up in general, which I'm going to. So then the fade basically almost makes them that you can't see them anymore, which is pretty cool. You know something I didn't do on these is I didn't align and do that, so they're just duplicated for me. Luckily, I can do this after that. Anyways, that's another thing with fades is keep in mind you can use it to do these things a little more in an artistic way if you want to, and fades can be super helpful in that. Just fade over the top of everything, and there you have it. You know, just that fade and adding a few things. I'll probably end up finishing something like this up, but you wouldn't even have to do any of this star stuff. You could just find decals you really like and put them on there. And just between a fade and these decals, just between a fade and decals, you can start getting a car that's going to look awesome. Very simple, too, because you can do fades any way you want, top to bottom, back to front, front to back. You can angle them. You can do, you know, two angles, different ways, coming at each other. Um, just, you know, mix and match your fades and throw some decals on there, which I think, you know, looking through decal placement and trying to find spots where they fit clean is just as important as doing a fancy livery. So, learning these basics of fades, learning to make sure to change your align with camera and your angles, especially while doing fades, can help you make a ton of cool liveries just starting out. Like a ton. I think the last thing we'll touch on with fades, because this is fades for a whole car, right? We also can do, let's just do the top of the car. And I'm not going to keep whatever I make here on this livery, but we can also do fades to make shape type decals, our own style. Um, I think I do it two different ways. I do it either way. Let's start. Let's just start here with a fade. I'm going to change it to camera again. I'm going to do my angle just to get any angles if I go over them. In this case, it'd be, you know, this front. It wraps around that bottom to get all the paint there. But let's stretch this out here. Let's go like that. So we can use fades just like that. That's kind of like an extra decal. Not really a full paint fade, but it kind of had something, you know, a little extra. Or we can add on top of that. Let's duplicate it. Let's go to the bottom one, replace. Let's replace with a square, which in this case is a rectangle because of how much I skewed the first fade. And let's change the bottom color. So now you have another thing. You could use this, even just this, without doing any more. Could be decals on the side or something just to catch a pop, somebody's eye. Change different colors. I've done, let's change this to, what, white will show up the best. I've done where you will actually make it a little bit smaller. So like I'm going to bring in these sides. Now you have a nice border. You can do that all over the car, or if it lines up with lines you've made before, like say it's a lot of sharp lines and edges and stuff. That's the style you're going for. Having these lines outline it can really help tie stuff together. We can do another duplicate. Let's make that one red. Let's make this one. Actually, let's make this one red. This one blue. You can do whatever you want, creating, and you can do this on other shapes too. The thing I'll say about making these fade shapes is the only way you can is in preset if they have a shape that matches up, right? These triangles can match up to the triangles and the shapes. Sometimes there's shapes that just don't have, like this, there's no fade in shape 2 for this. So you're not really going to be able to do that. And some of these don't have a shape 1. So like, but some of these basic ones, triangles, rectangles, and you can skew those any way you want. Just make sure, just do all the skewing beforehand, then do your duplicate and replace. But it's just a cool way. I've done somewhere doing this kind of stuff on the car is kind of a cool idea. So overall, that's the basics of fades. Um, you can do a lot with it. You can get a lot more in depth. For this video, I just wanted to keep it kind of basic to just get people started with fades, get people playing around with fades. They can be such a helpful tool and be very useful to just making, honestly, some really good liveries with a simple, even one color fade you can do. Um, it's as simple as that. You add a one color fade, add some of your favorite sponsors. You can change the colors out and make the car different just by changing the different fade colors that are included. So I just wanted to touch on the basics. Hopefully, this helps some of you starting out to really start getting in using some fades. We're going to go over different styles and stuff in future videos. So I appreciate it if you drop a like, if you subscribe, because we'll have more classes and we'll touch on more stuff. If you have any other questions or things you want to see in future videos, or if I do any live stream liveries, make sure to drop a comment below. I'll make sure I link the first video if you haven't already watched it. Make sure to go back and look at that. If you're very new into the livery editor, you can pick up some things. So I appreciate you guys watching, and make sure you look out for the next livery class as we'll jump into some more stuff, some more styles, and more things to add to your creative ideas and